Everything is about to change. Nobody is prepared for what happens next. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Aaron Sokol, and you're watching Parsha Inspired. We are in the midst of the Messianic era, and everything is changing. But who is the Messiah? What exactly happens when Messiah comes? What does Messiah do? What changes are about to happen and that need to happen when Messiah comes? So let's dive in. Most people imagine the Messiah as a mystical figure instantly recognized by the world. But according to Judaism, if he fails, he is not the Messiah. Think carefully about how shocking that actually is, because Judaism does not identify the Messiah through charisma or miracles or followers. The Messiah is identified by what he accomplishes in the real world. He must return the Jewish people to Israel, restore Jerusalem, rebuild the temple, reestablish the Sanhedrin, restore the Torah to the center of civilization itself. And according to Maimonides, only after accomplishing these things is he confirmed as the Messiah. Meaning, Judaism does not describe redemption as fantasy. It describes the redemption as transformation of civilization itself. And according to Jewish tradition, the Messiah will become the greatest political genius the world has ever seen. Not mythology, not fantasy, but a real leader, transforming civilization itself. And according to many Jewish sources, it is entirely possible that he is already alive. Now think about how radically different that is from what most people think or imagine. Because Judaism never described the Messiah as an escape from history. Instead, it describes something far more real. A human being emerging inside of history itself. The prophet Isaiah says, "A shoot will come forth from the stock of Jesse, and a branch will grow from his roots." Meaning, the Messiah will descend directly from King David, not symbolically, literally. And throughout Jewish history, there have always been families preserving the divinic ancestry. But lineage alone doesn't mean anything, because according to Judaism, the Messiah must accomplish what no leader in human history has ever accomplished. The prophet Isaiah describes the Messiah as possessing the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and fear of God, meaning wisdom, strategy, leadership, spiritual insight, and of course, moral clarity, all united with one individual. And according to Jewish tradition, the Messiah will eventually achieve prophecy itself, second only to Moses. But perhaps the most fascinating part is this: the Messiah's greatness is revealed gradually. At first, he may appear simply to be an extraordinary leader. But as his influence grows, the world slowly begins recognizing and realizing who he truly is. Because according to Jewish tradition, the Messiah will possess extraordinary ability to see through deception and hypocrisy. Isaiah says he will not judge by what his eyes see or decide by what his ears hear. Meaning, he will perceive people with extraordinary spiritual clarity. And according to the prophets, this ability develops gradually as well. But here's where things become even more extraordinary. The Messiah is not identified by claims, not by followers, not by charisma, but by measurable transformation in the real world. Maimonides writes, "If there arises a ruler from the family of David, immersed in Torah and commandments like David, his ancestor, like David his ancestor, following both the written and oral Torah, who leads Israel back to the Torah, strengthening the observance of its laws and fighting God's battles, then we may assume that he is the Messiah. Notice carefully, at this stage, he is still not confirmed. But then Maimonides continues. If he is further successful in rebuilding the third temple on its original site and gathering the dispersed of Israel, then his identity as Messiah is certain. Think carefully about what Judaism is saying. The Messiah is recognized through history itself, through actual civilization level transformation. Meaning, if he does not accomplish these things, he is not the Messiah. And therefore, Judaism describes redemption not as a fantasy, but as the restoration of the world itself. And maybe, just maybe, that process already began long ago. Because according to the prophets, before the complete redemption, the Jewish people will return to their homeland, Israel. The land itself will begin flourishing again. Jerusalem's return to the center of Jewish history, and eventually to the center of world attention itself. Now, the prophet Ezekiel says, "O mountains of Israel, let your branches sprout forth and yield your fruit to my people Israel, for they are soon to come." Meaning, until they come, it won't give fruit. Think about how extraordinary that prophecy is. For nearly 2,000 years, the Jewish people were scattered on the four corners of the world, as it says they will. The land of Israel was barren. Nobody was successful in building it up. Empires rose and fell, but the prophet insisted the Jewish people return, and therefore the land itself would flourish again. And today, millions of Jews have returned to Israel. The language, Hebrew, has been revived. Jerusalem, once again, stands at the center of Jewish life. It is the heart of the Jewish people. And somehow this tiny strip of land became the emotional obsession of the world. Politics, religion, war, identity, civilization itself. The nations of the world are fixated on Jerusalem, exactly as the prophets described. Zechariah said, "I will return to Zion and dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. Jerusalem shall be called the city of truth." And the prophets describe a future where the nations themselves become drawn towards Jerusalem. Isaiah writes, "It shall come to pass in the end of days that the mountain of God's house shall be established above the hills, and all nations shall stream to it." Think about the scale of that vision. Humanity searching for truth, nations coming not for war, but for wisdom. The prophet continues, "Many nations shall go and say, 'Come, let us go up to the mountain of God, and he will teach us his ways.'" Meaning, the Messianic era is not merely about the Jewish people surviving. It's about all humanity itself changing directions. And according to the prophets, this transformation begins through leadership. Real leadership. Not slogans, not celebrity, not performance, not miracles, but a spiritual leader capable of morality, spirituality, transformation of civilization itself. And according to Jewish tradition, the Messiah restores what history lost. He restores the Sanhedrin, the ancient supreme court and legislator of Israel. As Isaiah says, "I will restore your judges at first, and your counselors as in the beginning." The restoration of the Sanhedrin. Think carefully about what that means. Judaism is not describing symbolic spirituality. It is describing the rebuilding of an entire civilization structure lost for thousands of years. The Messiah also restores the tribes of Israel. Take a look at the end of Ezekiel. According to Jewish tradition, he will identify the tribes, determine legitimate Kohanim and Leviim, and restore the inheritance structure of the land itself. The prophet Malachi says he will purify the children of Levi and refine them like gold and silver. And therefore, this is no longer some abstract theology. This is the rebuilding of an entire world. The Messiah also restores practices absent for millennia: the sabbatical year, the Jubilee year, the sacrificial system inside the third temple. Now, to modern ears, that may sound ancient or strange, but the deeper point is, Judaism never described redemption in the destruction of civilization. Instead, it described the elevation of civilization, a world aligned with truth and justice, morality and God. And according to the prophets, the Messianic era transforms not only Israel, but humanity itself. The prophets, Isaiah says, "Nations shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither will they practice war anymore." Think about how impossible that sounded throughout human history. Empires rise and fall, wars never end, civilizations destroy each other endlessly. And yet, the prophet envisioned a future where humanity fundamentally changes direction. Not through annihilation, but through transformation. Isaiah continues, "The earth will be full of knowledge of God as the water covers the sea." Now stop and think about what that actually means. A world where truth becomes clear again. A world where humanity stops worshiping idols, the idols of power, ego, violence, money, and instead begins pursuing wisdom and godliness, the Torah, the 7 laws of Noah. According to the prophets, Jerusalem eventually becomes the spiritual capital of the world. Zechariah writes, "Many people and mighty nations will come and seek the God of hosts in Jerusalem." And then comes one of the most extraordinary prophecies of all. Zechariah says, "In those days, 10 men from all the nations will take hold of the garment of a Jew, his tzitzis, saying, Neilcha imochem, we will go with you. Ki shamanu Elokim imochem, we have heard that God is with you." Think about that vision. Humanity no longer fighting against truth, but seeking it out. But according to Jewish tradition, humanity's primary occupation in the Messianic era will no longer be endless conflict and survival, but the pursuit of knowledge of God, the 7 Noahide laws. The confusion of civilization begins disappearing. Jeremiah says, "I will place my Torah inside of them and inscribe it upon their hearts." Ezekiel says, "I will remove the heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." Meaning, humanity itself begins changing internally, not because free will disappears, but because truth becomes overwhelmingly clear. The Messianic era changes none of the Torah itself. Nothing is added or removed. Meaning, the Messianic era is not the replacement of Judaism. It is the fulfillment of Judaism. And maybe this explains something deeper in the modern world. Because the existence of Israel is not merely political. It is theological. The return of the Jewish people to their land, the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the global obsession with this tiny nation creates a profound crisis for many worldviews. Because if the prophets were correct about Israel's returning, about Jerusalem becoming the center of world attention, about the nations focusing themselves against Jerusalem, then people began asking a disturbing question. What if the rest of the prophecy is true as well? And maybe that's why emotions surrounding Israel feel so unusually intense? Because beneath the politics, beneath the media, beneath the protests, lies something much, much deeper. A civilization's struggle over truth, history, God, and the future direction of humanity itself. Because, according to the prophets, Jerusalem does not become less important at the end of history. It becomes the center of it. And maybe that's why the modern world feels so unstable right now. Because humanity has achieved extraordinary technological power without moral clarity. AI, biotech, autonomous warfare, global communications. Humanity became powerful faster than it became wise. And deep down, people feel it. People sense civilization itself is approaching some kind of turning point. A moment where humanity must decide what truth is, what morality is, what kind of civilization it wants to build. And maybe that's why the messianic idea suddenly feels less abstract than it once did. Because Judaism does not describe redemption as escaping the world. It describes transforming the world. And according to Maimonides, the final certainty comes when one thing happens: the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. A structure the prophets describe not merely as a Jewish building, but as the spiritual center of humanity itself. And maybe that's why the temple remains one of the most controversial and mysterious ideas in the modern world. Because if Judaism is correct, the rebuilding of the temple would not simply change Israel. It would change civilization forever. And the modern war with Iran, they're very clear about their objectives. They want Israel to be destroyed. They say, we're not anti-Semitic, we're not against the Jews. And they're correct. They see the reestablishment of the state of Israel and the Jews returning as a theological problem for their religion. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Shalom from just outside Jerusalem.